Hello, everybody. So this is part two of the interview questions that were given to me from Lincoln Way High School, and I'll be answering these questions essentially one by one. There's some of them that the answers are going to be really quick. So yeah, first one is: have I ever studied or worked abroad? No. If you have the means to do it, I would say go for it. But growing up, I've never had the means. My parents. Um, what's up, Yola? But growing up, we never had the means for me to go abroad. A lot of students, they're lucky. Their parents have saved. They're blessed. Their parents have saved. They put them into a position for them to be able to go to college and not have to worry about student loan debt. I wasn't in that position, and so I had to work in order to go through college and had to pay for college out of pocket. So I didn't get the opportunity to go abroad. What schools would you recommend for your major? If you're looking to get into PT school, where you go doesn't matter as much as what grades you get and what you do outside of class. Joining organizations, presidents of organizations, showing leadership skills, showing altruism, going out there and volunteering your time. So where you go to school isn't as big of a deal as the fact that when you're in school, you put the time in, you put the work in, and you do a great job while you're there. What types of internships may be good for a person looking to get into this career? Definitely go volunteer in PT clinics. Go volunteer outside of PT clinics, right? I guess the first thing that you need as a PT is the ability to communicate with people among different races. I'm going to come back to this in a second because I answered a little bit about the bridge program yesterday. You need to be able to communicate with people of different races, different socioeconomic statuses. You essentially just need the skills to communicate. And so I recommend going to volunteer in a soup kitchen, a mission, somewhere where you're going to communicate with people that may put you outside of your comfort zone a little bit. And so if your comfort zone is there, if your comfort zone is with those who've had not, go volunteer for those who've had, go be a caddy or go work, as a caddy in a golf club, and just learn how to communicate with different socioeconomic statuses. So that way when you're in the environment where you're dealing with patients who either have or have not, you don't feel uncomfortable working with those patients. Yola says, I want to go to a bridge program. Unfortunately, I can't afford it, and I don't have the time with a little girl, but I wish. It's interesting. I don't know if I'd recommend being a PT. I'm sure that question's going to be in here right now. I don't know if I'd recommend going from PTA to PT right now. It's hard to see how these changes with Medicare are going to shake out. I mean, unless you're looking to open up your own practice, unless you're going the entrepreneurial route, I can't say for certain that it's a good return on investment at this point. When you look at PTA school, I mean, I've seen people, I think my wife spent 13,000, 18,000. But I've seen people spending $30,000 to go to PTA school, and even still, at $30,000, it's a great return on investment because you're coming out making $40,000 to $50,000 a year. But for you to go back to PT school, one, it's opportunity costs. You're going to lose the opportunity of making $20,000 a year, half your salary, right, or $25,000 or almost $30,000 a year, half your salary, and you're going to do that for 2 to 3 years. So it's already costing you, $60,000 to $90,000 to go to PT school, and that's, that hasn't taken into account yet the actual cost of PT school, which could be anywhere from $80,000 to $150,000. If you're spending, we'll go on the low end. If you're spending, 80 plus 60, and so you're spending $140,000, and you come out making 70. Can't say it's a great return on your investment at that point. And God forbid you go to an expensive school, 150, and you're at the high end of 3 years off, which is 90, and now it's $240,000, and you're making 70, you're making 80. It's gonna be a hard life. It's not easy to pay all that money back. So I don't know if I would recommend that transition from PTA to PT at this point in time, the way that the profession is shaping up in year 2020. 2017, it was a no-brainer. 2012, definitely a no-brainer to get into PT school. And the farther back you go, this profession was a no-brainer because the return on investment was there. I just don't know if it's there right now. Okay. What requirements did you need to get into grad school or PT school? Heavy science, moderate math, some chemistry, some physics, lots of biology, some statistics, English. You need your gen eds, obviously. You need to get rid of those first. But then you need higher level biology. Some schools require calculus. Some schools require organic chemistry, your physics 1 and 2s. So yeah, it's all going to be based off of the school that you're applying to. I have some students that have observed under me, and they met the requirements for one school but not others, because each school has their own set of requirements in order for you to get in. So that's where you'd have to look at the school, but just know that you're going to go heavy science, some math, and then everything else gen eds. How many years of schooling? I addressed this last time, but it's going to be anywhere from 6 to 7 years of school typically. You can expect to go through an undergrad program that either directs you right into a doctorate program, or go through 4 years of undergrad, get a degree. I'm going to touch on this one in a second, but then you're going to apply to PT school to go into a doctorate program. I highly recommend you get a degree in something that you can actually use. Do not go through an undergrad to get a degree that requires you to get a degree, right? Don't spend 4 years of your life getting a degree that requires you to move on to get another degree. So like pre-PT, there's not a lot you can do with that other than go through PT. And if you don't get into PT school on your first attempt, what are you going to do with that degree? So I highly recommend that you get a degree that you can actually use and make some money with while you're trying to get into PT school, especially if you don't get in on that first attempt or second attempt, like I've heard from some of my previous interviews and some of the people that are posting on Facebook. Definitely get a degree that you can use. Did you have any other professions in mind before you decided on this one? Yeah, I was studying to be a teacher. I touched on that yesterday, so I won't go too much into that. Go back and watch the first video. What was your favorite part about being a student in PT school? Man, there was no favorite part. Gosh, yeah, there was no favorite part. I mean, the people that I was in class with, I mean, it's really cool. You become a family, right? You're in school. You're together so often that is your an extension of your family. But like, was PT school fun? Not really. I won't say it was really hard, right? It's very time consuming, but I definitely won't say that PT school was fun. It was a means to an end, and so I won't say that I had a favorite part about going through PT school. What was your least favorite part about being a student in the PT field? The time. It's a lot of classwork. You're in didactic work for, I'm going to touch on, I do have a least favorite part. I'm coming back to this one in a second. You spend a lot of time because there's a lot of stuff that they have to teach you in order to prepare you for the boards, for your licensure exam that you take at the end of PT school. Now, my least favorite part of PT school was clinicals, right? Not all my clinicals, because I was blessed in some of mine, but to see how, I'm going to say careless, right, is the easiest way that I can say that, is to see how careless some companies are with students. When a student is coming in, that's an onus of responsibility on the CI, the clinical instructor, who is taking that student to actually want to have a student. And when you have companies that are forcing clinical instructors to take students because it pads their bottom dollar, right? Because theoretically they could see more people because they have an extra body in the clinic. That's not cool, right? That's not good. And I saw that on my clinicals. And anytime that you have a CI that has a clinical instructor, right? And so this is an extension of school, but out in the clinical world. And anytime that you have a clinical instructor who's got a large ego, right? And and is extremely prideful, you could run into some problems, especially when you have an eager student. I'll come right out and say this. I got kicked out of one of my clinicals. I still laugh about it because it's just beyond me. But yeah, I actually, yesterday I talked about getting kicked out of a class. Today I talked about getting kicked out of a clinical. You're seeing a pattern, right? Part of what I do is I challenge the norms. And after I went through a clinical with Bill Curtis, hey, salute, thank you, Bill. You know, you've changed changed the trajectory of my career. After going through a clinical with Bill Curtis, I was in a clinic where the clinical instructor, my CI, essentially my teacher, wasn't very proactive. Had a very passive approach, and it was one of the horror stories that you hear about. You know, the clinical instructor would be back at his desk while the patient was out there doing their exercises. These are the horror stories that I hear from patients, and I lived it, right? I mean, I was there, and when I asked if I can go out there and work with the patient, because I thought that I could help the patient, because that's what we got into this field for, is to help people. That's why some of us got into this field, right? And so I went out there to help the patient, and when the patient got better with me after 25 minutes, which wasn't difficult for those that have seen some of these rapid changes, for some PTs, because there are some PTs that are a little bit more trained is the best word I'll use, a little bit more trained to see patterns, right? Anyway, but the therapist had a large ego, couldn't accept the fact that I was able to help the patient that he didn't help, nor did he really try to help, because he was spending a lot of time in the office, either reading the newspaper or playing on the computer. But he couldn't tolerate the fact that the patient, was appreciative of what I did and not appreciative of what he did, and so he kicked me out of the clinic. So yeah, there are some bad parts of going through the program, and that was one of them. I got kicked out of a clinical, and that could have wreaked havoc on my graduation date. Luckily, the school placed me in a clinic really quick, right? So I was placed in a clinic within the next couple of days, and I'm glad I was. The clinic that I went to, phenomenal, still friends to this day. Was it difficult to get into graduate school? I touched on this yesterday. No, for me, I was recruited, but I'm going to change it. Is it difficult to get into graduate school? Yes. I have a student right now, and this student is applying to PT school. The number that he gave me from the website that he applies through, the PTCast website, was that there were about 119,000 or 100,000 applicants, right? And when we broke down the math, it was essentially 2 out of every 10 people get in. So there's roughly 20% of the people that are applying to get into PT school get a seat based off of the numbers that he had off of that PTCast. I've heard those numbers to be a little bit higher in other places, from other people, other sources, but 2 out of 10 is pretty competitive to get in. Why did I choose my current career? You're talking to the wrong person on that one. I do things until I don't enjoy them anymore, or I'm no longer challenged, and then I move on. So to give you a little bit of a synopsis on me, I was a cart guy at Sam's Club. That's where I started. I started working at 16. Worked there until I became Employee of the Year in 2003. From there, I went to work at a gym. Worked there until I went on clinicals. While I was in PT school, I was working close to full time, and so for me, it was just another option for me to go to, right? It was presented to me by a professor that I wasn't aware that PT was even an option, but it was presented to me as an option, and so I realized I wasn't enjoying the teaching route that I was going into, so I figured, why not, right? And so it's a horrible answer. It's a horrible answer. Like when I talk to other therapists who've dreamed of being PTs their entire life, and for me, I kind of fell into it, and that's another reason why I have a little bit of a chip on my shoulder, is because I still have something to prove, because just because I was recruited into this profession, I'm not going to take that lightly. I actually want to show that, hey, I belong here. I grew up on the east side of Joliet, and I'm the only one, I'm the youngest one, and I'm the only one in my family to graduate high school. I need to show that I belong with all of these people that, higher GPAs through high school. They may have been part of the haves with their family. I need to show that I belong here. So there's a chip on my shoulder. What was the most challenging topic for me in school? Honestly, the hardest thing for me to do in school was to show up to classes that I wasn't interested in. And when you're going to college, you're going to find that that's, and this is an honest answer, when you're going to college, there's going to be a lot of stuff that you just don't care about, right? I mean, when you're taking some of your gen eds, you're thinking this has absolutely nothing to do with what I'm going to study or what I'm going to do with my career. And you may not be wrong, it's honestly, my music history doesn't really play a role in what I do on a daily basis. But that was probably the hardest thing for me in school, was attending classes that I had no interest in, and I knew it wasn't going to be applicable to my career. You still have to jump through the hoops in order to finish. What tips do I have for students entering school to focus on the PT profession? Keep your GPA as high as you can. If you're not, and this is not criticism on anybody, right? This is just, it's reality. If you're not doing well in school, you're probably not going to get into the PT profession, right? If you're not able to carry a 3.5, you're going to struggle to get in, right? And you might be one of the lucky ones, don't get me wrong, but you're not in the majority, all right? You're competing against people who are coming in with 4.0s. They never saw a B going 4 years of undergrad. You're competing with people who have been presidents of associations, presidents of small groups. And so if you want to get in, show that you're a go-getter. Show that you have what it takes in order to put yourself above everybody else. And honestly, for me, my GPA was a 3.8, which is higher than norm, right? But it's not a 4.0, right? But I've followed a mantra almost my entire life, right? I can remember saying this when I was 13 out on the basketball court. All hustle, no talent. And that's not to put me down by saying that I'm not talented at what I do. But, you're going to be hard-pressed to find somebody who outworks me. And that work ethic is what drives me to be amongst, in 2017, voted by my peers as one of the top 40 in the profession. That was an awesome honor, but it was work ethic. That was it. There was nothing else that put me there. So if you want to get into PT school, work your butt off. Try your best not to get a B in anything. Straight A's if you can. Go be a president of some organization, and if you can't do that, show that you can manage, you can multitask. Me personally, I worked 1-2 full-time jobs while I was going through undergrad and still pulled a 3.8. Show that you can handle the workload and not break under pressure. So that runs through the first group of questions that I was asked, and I'll come back on another day to answer the next group. Thanks for watching.